Hi, everyone, and welcome. All right, some stories don't begin with answers, they begin with the wound. Today's conversation is about what happens when care is absent, when access is delayed, and when a child learns to disappear in order to survive, and what it takes years later to refuse that disappearance. I'm honored to be joined by Dr. Jenny Holland, psychologist, writer, and author of the extraordinary essay, My Story Began Here, and A Box Meant to Save Me. Her work weaves lived experience, disability justice, sacred psychology, and truth-telling into a powerful reflection on dignity, healing, and what it truly means to be held. This is a conversation about broken doors and becoming the threshold and refusing silence, and about being ourselves in the places where care should have come first. If you've ever waited outside a door that never opened, this conversation is for you. Dr. Jenny Holl, Dr. Jenny Holland, welcome and thank you for being here.
Hello, and thank you for having me. And I wanted to say Happy New Year to everybody out there who's watching this today.
Yeah, likewise. Happy New Year to you too, and to the viewer that'll be watching. So, Dr. Jenny, my opening question to you, right, is how did theory help you name the wound without overriding the lived truth of your body and history?
That is a good question. I would say that theory didn't lead, my body did. I didn't use theory to explain myself away, I used it to stop gaslighting myself. For most of my life, my body told the truth first about danger, exclusion, rupture, but there was no shared language to hold that truth. So, attachment theory, trauma theory, disability studies, Carl Jung didn't replace my lived experience. I would say they caught up to it. And theory helped me name patterns that were already there: misattunement, abandonment, systemic harm. It gave the wound dignity. It let me say this happened without turning myself into the problem. The body stays primary for me, and theory serves the body. Otherwise, it doesn't have a place here.
That's really interesting. Uh, how do we recognize the moment when silence becomes violence and courage becomes necessary rather than optional?
When silence starts costing our nervous systems more than speech does, silence becomes violent when it demands self erasure to maintain belonging. There's a moment, quiet and unmistakable, when staying silent requires you to split from yourself. You can feel it in your body. It tightens, and your breath shortens, and your world shrinks. At that point, speaking is no longer about bravery, it's about integrity. Courage isn't heroic in this way, it's regulatory. It's the act of choosing coherence over compliance. When silence requires you to disappear, speech becomes necessary. Care keeps you alive, and being held lets you belong.
Wow. How do you define the difference between being physically cared for and being truly held, and why is that distinction central to healing?
I was physically cared for in many ways, medically, procedurally, but I was not always held. Being held means someone is oriented toward you. They adjust. They notice your cues. They don't treat your body as a problem to manage or a task to complete. Healing doesn't come from survival alone. It comes from being met, from knowing you don't have to contort yourself to be worthy of care. That distinction between maintenance and attunement is everything.
Okay. When did you realize blessing isn't about being invited in, but about becoming the threshold yourself?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Sure. When did you realize blessing isn't about being invited in, but about becoming the threshold yourself?
Um, well, I had spent so much of my life waiting at doors that wouldn't open. and that caused a lot of pain and suffering. And so Torah as Mir began as a project, in a sense, to write my way out of the stuckness that I was experiencing. I also
Oh,
wanted to give other people a window into uh, this experience and what it's like to have exclusion located on the body.
uh-huh. All right. I wanted to confirm, did I ask you about how does reframing disability-related accidents as systemic failures transform responsibility? Did I ask you that?
No, you haven't asked me that yet, but I think it's a good question
Thank
because
you.
yeah, sure. I think that the the reframe puts the responsibility exactly where it belongs. So, in our culture and in cultures around the world, often if you have a difference that's located on the body, it's seen as an individual situation or plight. And it's important that institutions make structural changes so that access isn't optional and it isn't a favor either, because people with disabilities have a lot to contribute, but we need to be able to get in.
Wow. All right. My final question, I think, to you, and then I'll get to the comments here, if there are any. What practices help someone begin blessing themselves when they've never been shown how?
I think that's also a good question. And the way that I arrived at blessing as part of my clinical practice was based on my clients wanting more than just intellectual answers. And so I always begin with what is happening in the body. And when we can pay attention to what's really true at our center, we can begin to relax into blessing and into knowing what is true.
All right. I don't see any comment questions at the moment. So what I'm gonna say is like, is there any topic you'd like us to discuss for next week?
Let's see. For next week, let me think about it for 1 second. Um, Next week, we're going to be talking about accountability and what it means to answer a spiritual call.
Okay, all right. There is a comment question here for you. All right. This is from Resh Chetan. Dear Jenny, you are brave and strong. How do how does one cope in a society where people are mobile?
Thank you for seeing my strength and for bringing this question here. How do I cope in a society where most people are mobile? I trust my intuition. I adapt. I do my best to communicate my needs effectively and clearly. And I have spiritual practices in place. Writing Torah as mirror is one of them, to anchor me and keep me steady in this world that wasn't designed for my body.
Wow. All right. All I gotta say is thanks so much for your time, and yeah, we'll catch up off air, and then yeah, we'll take it from there.
Thank you so much for having me again, and I look forward to talking to you next week.
Thanks. Take care.
All right. Bye bye.